Since Officer Williams had a handgun in his hand, I was the one who applied the handcuffs onto Mr. Shields.
And the handgun that he had was Mr. Shields' handgun?
Correct.
And at this stage, he doesn't know whether the handgun works or if there's some type of problem with it. Is that correct?
Yes, we don't know the condition of the handgun at this point.
Now, can you describe the process of handcuffing someone? What did you have to do to handcuff Mr. Shields?
In order to handcuff Mr. Shields, obviously we have to put their hands behind their back, close enough where both handcuffs can reach the wrist, and we apply the handcuffs, and then we do another step which is called double locking the handcuffs, which basically ensures that the handcuffs do not open or close any further.
And at that point, are the handcuffs secure?
After double locking, yes, but it's a very tedious process.
Can you describe how you double lock handcuffs?
Double locking handcuffs is, I don't know how to explain it, but it's like almost a needle-sized piece of metal that you have to stick into a small hole in the handcuff and push down on that button. And after you push down on that button, you have to squeeze the handcuff to make sure that the handcuff is actually locked.
And while you're in the process of handcuffing Mr. Shields, what do you observe Officer Williams doing?
I observed Officer Williams giving commands to the crowd behind me, because now my back is to the crowd, telling them to get back.
Okay. And as part of that crowd, you see Mr. Holloway, Rufus Holloway, in that crowd.
Yes, I do see Mr. Holloway in that crowd.
And how does Mr. Holloway appear to you?
He appeared very angry and agitated, kind of out of control a little bit.
And are you able to see what Mr. Holloway is doing or where he is?
At that point, I'm securing Mr. Shields in handcuffs, so I'm kind of dividing my attention between the crowd behind me and Mr. Shields, and trying to complete this process of the double locking and securing the handcuffs. So I know that he's right behind me because I can hear him.
Does Mr. Shields ever come towards the position that you're in?
Do you mean Mr. Holloway?
I'm sorry, Mr. Holloway come towards where you are?
Yes, he does.
I'll show you it's previously been marked as Exhibit 2.
What's the number?
2. You recognize this area?
Yes, that is the area where this incident occurred at.
Okay. Can you describe to us where you and Mr. Shields were as you were handcuffing him?
We were somewhere back there where the red dot is marked, kind of in that dirt area back there.
Okay. And where was Officer Williams the point where you were attempting to handcuff Mr. Shields?
At the moment when I was handcuffing?
Yes.
He was right beside me at that point.
Okay. And when you first saw Mr. Holloway begin to approach, where was he standing at the time?
When I first saw him, he was not directly in the middle of this field, but a little bit more towards the sidewalk. But I mean, he was walking our direction.
Okay. He was walking your direction.
Yes.
And as he was walking your direction, how did he appear?
He was extremely agitated. He was upset that we were arresting this gentleman.
And how did he sound? Did he say anything?
Yeah, he said, "Why are you arresting him?"
Okay. Now, your back's to Mr. Holloway as he's approaching.
Correct.
And what do you see Officer Williams do?
Officer Williams then gets up and starts, he walks behind me, so I know at that point that now he's going to engage Mr. Holloway, who's standing fairly close to us.
And how close is Officer Williams in relation to you?
A couple feet.
How close does Mr. Holloway get to Officer Williams?
He gets within arm's reach.
Okay. Did you see Mr. Holloway standing over in this area at any point?
No, I did not.
Did Officer Williams walk from over here all the way over here to where to Mr. Holloway and kick him?
No, he did not.
Okay, so is it your testimony that Mr. Holloway walked towards this direction where you and Mr. Officer Williams were?
That's correct.
And was he given any instruction by Officer Williams?
He was given the same instruction that the crowd was given to get back.
Okay. And did Mr. Holloway get back?
No.
What did he do?
He kept walking towards us.
Okay. What did Officer Williams do as Mr. Holloway approached him?
As Mr. Holloway is now approaching him, Officer Williams draws his department-issued handgun and points it straight at him and tells him to get back.
And did you see Officer Williams point the gun at Mr. Holloway?
Yeah, I saw him draw his handgun and point it straight at Mr. Holloway.
Did you stand up and show the arm movement, how Officer Williams' arm was when he pointed the gun?
May I stand up? Okay. Well, he had Mr. Shields' handgun in his left hand, which was pointed down at the ground, and he's kind of standing at a bladed stance, and he draws his handgun and points it straight out at him and tells him get back. So he's standing like this, essentially.
And which direction is Mr. Holloway coming towards Officer Williams?
Straight at him.
With the handgun drawn?
Yes.
And you said that he gets close enough. Does he get close enough where he could have touched Officer Williams?
Yes.
And what does Officer Williams do then?
Officer Williams at that point starts backing up because I see Mr. Holloway continue to advance on Officer Williams quickly.
Okay. And how does Mr. Holloway appear as he's approaching Officer Williams with his gun drawn?
He's very angry, he's very upset. He's walking, kind of rushing at him with his hands up.
You see his hands up?
I see his hands up, but they're not up in a submissive way. He's kind of leaning towards, charging, if you will, at Officer Williams.
And as you're seeing Mr. Holloway go at Officer Williams with his gun drawn, what's going through your mind?
At that point, I'm thinking, I'm probably going to die. This guy's going to disarm Officer Williams, and he's going to shoot me and shoot Officer Williams, and I'm not going to go home and see my pregnant wife.
Okay. You can sit down. Now, as Mr. Holloway approaches Officer Williams, what does Officer Williams do?
I see him deliver a front kick towards Mr. Holloway.
Does he make contact?
Yeah, he struck him somewhere in the midsection of Mr. Holloway.
I'm sorry, can you stand up again without leaving the box?
Yes.
Is that okay, officer?
Yeah,
Can you point to the area where he made contact with Mr. Holloway?
It was here, midsection.
Did he kick Mr. Holloway in the groin area?
No.
Okay. And what did Mr. Holloway do once Officer Williams kicked him?
I saw Mr. Holloway then shift his body and grab Officer Williams' leg and start pulling backwards. I saw his body actually move backwards as he pulled Officer Williams' leg.
And what, if anything, went through your mind when you saw that?
Now that solidifies the thought of, you know, this is going to be a deadly force situation. I'm going to have to shoot somebody at this point because he's attacking an officer that has two guns on him.
And when Officer Williams grabs his foot, I'm sorry, when Mr. Holloway grabs Officer Williams' foot, how do you see Officer Williams react?
I see Officer Williams swinging his arms wildly, trying to keep his balance and not fall on his back.
Okay. And he's got a gun in each hand at this point?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Now, when Officer Williams kicks Mr. Holloway, can you describe in this picture the general area that took place?
That kick would probably be more towards the middle of that field right there, not a little bit more upwards. Kind of at the tip of your fingernail, like right where that white dot is, right around there.
Okay. And so he did not kick him over here?
No.
And Officer Williams gave Mr. Holloway commands to step back, is that correct? Get back?
Yes, numerous commands.
And did Mr. Holloway place his hands down here and Officer Williams' foot just land on top of his hands?
No. I saw an intentional grab of his foot.
Okay. After Mr. Holloway pulled Officer Williams' foot, what happened next?
Then, shortly thereafter, Mr. Holloway releases his foot, and Officer Williams is able to regain his balance.
Once Mr. Holloway releases the foot, what does he do?
He immediately starts walking away.
Okay. Walking, when you say away, in what direction on the picture?
He's now walking towards the street, so he's walking away from, I guess, my location.
Okay. So when your location is up here,
Yeah, I'm pretty much where the red dot's at.
and you said Mr. Holloway was walking towards the street, or in this direction?
Correct.
And where's the crowd in relation to the direction that Mr. Holloway was walking?
The crowd is located, they're kind of spread out at this point, but they're more towards the street, kind of more concentrated towards that light pole right there.
There's light pole area here?
Yes.
Okay, and after Mr. Holloway starts walking away from Officer Williams, what happens next?
Officer Williams then tells him, get on the ground, you're under arrest.
Does Mr. Holloway comply?
No, he continues walking away.
Okay. Did Mr. Holloway immediately lay on the ground and place his hands behind his back?
No, he did not.
Okay. What did Officer Williams do at that point?
At that point, he holsters his handgun and retrieves his pepper spray or OC spray.
And what does he do with that?
He sprays Mr. Holloway.
Does he give Mr. Holloway any commands at that point?
He had previously told him to get on the ground, and Holloway continued walking away.
Okay, and after he was sprayed, what did Mr. Holloway do?
He appeared to be disoriented by the effects of the spray. He kind of walked around, and then he eventually went to the ground.
And when he went to the ground, did he lay flat and place his hands behind his back?
No.
Now, did Officer Williams walk over in this area, tell Mr. Holloway to get down, wait until he got on one knee, and then spray him?
No.
And when Mr. Holloway's on the ground, what do you see him do?
I see Mr. Holloway. He's screaming because of it's the effects of the spray. It's causing pain to his face. It's a burning sensation, and I see him with his hands clutched under his body, and he's rolling side to side.
And does Officer Williams, does he arrest him at that point?
No, he doesn't.
What does Officer Williams do?
He looks over at me, and somehow we non-verbally communicate that because he still has Mr. Shields' handgun in his left hand, he still can't effect an arrest safely, so we switch places.
Okay, and he comes back to where Mr. Shields is?
Yes.
And where do you go?
I walk towards Mr. Holloway.
Okay, when you walk towards Mr. Holloway, do you give him any commands?
I yell, "Orlando Police, put your hands behind your back."
Okay, and did he do that?
No, he continued screaming, rolling around.
And as you approached him, which way is his head facing at this point? Towards the road or back towards the street?
His head is facing towards the tree.
Okay. And is he laying flat at that point?
No, he's rolling around. He has his hands clutched underneath his body.
And what do you do?
I then again, louder, yell, "Orlando Police, put your hands behind your back."
Does he comply?
No, he starts kicking backwards at this point.
Okay. When he's kicking backwards, does he ever make contact with you?
Yeah, one of his kicks actually struck me on my right shin.
Okay. And kicking a police officer, is that a crime?
Yes, it's a felony.
Is that an arrestable offense?
Yes.
From an officer safety standpoint, is being kicked in the leg a concern for you?
It is, because if he managed to knock my feet from underneath me and get me on the ground, now at this point we're face to face and we're fighting each other, because I don't know his intention, so I'm at a position of disadvantage and he can easily get on top of me.
And at this point, have you had an opportunity to pat down Mr. Holloway?
No.
Do you know if he has any guns or weapons on him at this point?
No.
Okay. What do you do after you're kicked by Mr. Holloway?
After I'm kicked, I see that he's out of control, and I try to regain control, or try to obtain some type of control over him and his legs. So I drop down to my knees, and I try to control at least his left leg.
Okay. You list the mark for identification purposes O through H. go through those?
Okay, sorry.
Do you recognize these?
Yes, those are still photographs of the cell phone video, and there was one of the body camera video.
And have you seen these before?
Yes,
And how do you recognize and know that you've seen them before?
because I dated them on the back corner and put 2 dots on each side of the date, so I know that was me.
Is it a fair and accurate depiction of what you saw in the video?
Yes.
All right, moving to evidence.
No objection.
So admitted, thank you.
Another item I'd like to show you. This has been marked as identification. Pete? Pete? Yes, Pete. You recognize that?
Yes. This is a copy of the cell phone video.
And how do you recognize this?
I also dated it and put the 2 dots on the
You
side.
had an opportunity to view it?
Yes, I have.
Was it a fair and accurate depiction of a copy of the original video?
Yes.
Evidence?
No objection.
So admitted.
My paralegal approach to set up the computer.
Okay. Can the clerks assigning numbers to the exhibits? Okay.
Now, Officer Escobar, after you were kicked by Mr. Holloway, what did you do from there?
I dropped down to my knees and tried to control his legs so I wouldn't be kicked again.
Did you give Mr. Holloway any instruction?
Yeah, I repeatedly told him, put your hands behind your back.
And did he comply?
No, he continued to clutch his hands underneath him tightly.
What did you do?
At that point, I'm trying to hook his arm and trying to pull it out from underneath him, but he's actually pulling away from me. So he's preventing me from pulling his arm from underneath him.
Why are you trying to pull his arms out from underneath him?
I'm trying to put him in handcuffs.
Was he under arrest at that point?
Yes.
Had he committed any crimes at that point that you observed?
Objection asked and answered.
I'll allow it one more time, or some latitude, thank you. I'll allow some latitude, thank you.
I observed Mr. Holloway both batter Officer Williams and batter myself.
Okay. As you were trying to get your, Mr. Holloway's arms out from underneath him, was he resisting in any other way?
He's just resisting as in keeping his arms tight underneath him. He's not allowing me to effect my arrest.
What about the rest of his body? Is the rest of his body relaxed?
His body is tight. Even when I managed to get his arms behind him, he wouldn't allow me to get his arms close enough together to reach both handcuffs and be able to handcuff his hands.
Okay. And I'm going to direct your attention to the video that we have. This is the cell phone video. And this is the very beginning of the video as it starts. I'm going to direct your attention between let me ask you first, as you are starting to handcuff, as you are attempting to handcuff him, do you feel Mr. Holloway make any movement?
Yeah, he's been the whole time pushing up off the ground.
What do you mean by pushing up off the ground?
He's literally pushing up with his arms up off the ground, trying to push me off of him.
Okay, once you get his hands behind his back, do you feel any movement at that point?
Yes, he's still moving around. He's still tense.
Okay. And is he still pushing up off the ground?
Yes.
How so?
He's pushing up with his torso. He's pushing back towards.
Okay. And does that signify anything to you?
Those are cues that as an officer we're trained to pick up on when somebody is trying to either escape or attack somebody. As in, the body coming up, it signifies wherever the head goes, the body will follow. So if the head is coming up, that's something that we were trained in to pick up on.
And as you're sitting with a knee on top of Mr. Holloway, you feel him make any movement?
Yes.
What movement do you feel him make?
He pushes upward towards me.
Okay. And what do you do in response to that?
I strike him
And why do you strike him?
because he is resisting arrest.
I'm going to direct your attention to the video between the between the 2 and 3 second mark. Do you notice anything about Mr. Holloway's head in that video?
His head is slightly off the ground. It's not flat on the ground, but he's kind of has his head lifted up a little bit.
Okay. As we move further, frame by frame, towards the 3 second mark, you notice anything about his head there?
I see a significant lift of his head and his shoulders and torso.
And as you're sitting with your hands on Mr. Holloway, how does that feel to you?
Feels like he's trying to roll over on me.
What do you do?
I strike him because he's resisting arrest.
Okay. And you feel like he's starting to roll.
Correct.
does he in fact roll?
Yes, he rolled onto his left side at that point.
Okay. Now, if the person that you're trying to arrest rolls on their side, is that the same as them laying flat?
No.
Okay, from an officer safety standpoint, is that a concern to you?
Yes, it is, because if somebody's laying on their side, they can, at a moment's notice, get to their knees quickly and stand up, get to their feet, and then either attack me or escape.
And did you receive training in the academy regarding a person being on their side versus laying flat?
Yes, these are nonverbal cues that you experience during an arrest.
Now, it appears from the video that Mr. Holloway is handcuffed at this point. Why hit a man that's handcuffed?
I still perceive him as a threat. He can be handcuffed. I don't know what kind of training he has, but he can still injure me if he stands up, because he can strike me, he can attack me, or he can just plain and simple escape from me.
And at this point in time, have you checked Mr. Holloway for any type of guns or weapons?
At this point, I have not.
So you don't know if he has a gun or a weapon in the back of his pants that he's trying to reach?
I don't.
Okay. Now, in your report, you indicate that he was...
Objection, hearsay.
His report is in evidence.
That's a good point. I withdraw the objection. Sorry.
Okay.
Officer Escobar, your report can indicate that Mr. Holloway, that you struck Mr. Holloway and then handcuffed him. But it appears from the video that you handcuffed him and then struck him. Why the distinction?
I was mistaken. And the sequence of events, it all happened so quickly in a matter of a fraction, fractions of seconds, that it was all one continuous moment. It's hard to keep track of things exactly as they occur.
From an officer safety standpoint, even though the person is handcuffed, if they're resisting, can you still use physical force to prevent them from resisting?
It is at the officer's discretion. If they believe that they need to use force, that they can use force.
Okay. And at that point in time that you use force, even though he's handcuffed, what is your perception of what he's doing?
My perception is that he's trying to stand up. That he's trying to stand up to either attack me, or he's trying to stand up to escape.
And did the force that you use seem reasonable to you to
Objection.
prevent that?
Objection.
What's going through his mind at the time?
As to that phrase or word.
Excuse me, it's an ultimate issue objection?
Yes.
It's a good question.
Kind of goes to his thought and his opinion on what's reasonable under the circumstances.
Well, if an expert can't say it, can anybody else say it? Province of the jury?
Should we approach on, Judge?
Yep.
They withdraw the objection.
Okay.
Officer Escobar, the time that you used force on Mr. Holloway, did you believe that that force was reasonably necessary?
To control him, yes, I did.
Now, in your report, you also indicate that you were able to get some compliance after hitting Mr. Holloway. Can you explain that?
I was able to gain enough compliance to quickly move him to a safer location, to which what I believe was a safer location.
Why do you believe that to be a safer location?
I was away from the crowd wasn't to my back, as well as Officer Williams being there to back me up.
In relation to the video, the shot that's up, can you describe where the crowd was in relation to you?
The crowd is behind me, but off to, I guess, my right diagonally, so they would be somewhere in the bottom right corner of this area of the screen. I'm sorry.
Now on the screen, because it may be difficult to see, can you point out which one are you? Are you the one in the dark police uniform?
Yes, I'm the one standing up.
And Mr. Holloway, can you describe what he's wearing?
He's wearing a black t-shirt and some beige shorts.
Now there appears to be another individual next to him. Do you know who that is?
I don't know his real name, but in the community he was known as JoJo.
Okay. And is he, can you describe the position that he's laying in, that you recall him laying in at the time?
He's laying in the, I guess, perfect example of a compliant arrestee. He's laying flat on his stomach with his hands behind his back, his feet are relaxed, his arms are relaxed.
And where was he lying in relation to Mr. Holloway at the time that you gave the command to get down and place your hands behind your back?
Right next to him, to Mr. Holloway's right.
And did JoJo comply?
JoJo complied.
Okay, so you testified that you moved Mr. Holloway over to a safer location.
Yes.
Now this is at the 13-second mark of the video. You can take a look there. Can you tell us who the person is standing to your left in the dark blue outfit?
This person standing to my left would be Officer Williams.
Okay. And this other individual that's standing, or that's laying in the light, who's that?
That would be Mr. Shields.
And can you describe the position that he was in at that time?
He is laying in a compliant position, chest on the ground, shoulders on the ground, head on the ground, relaxed, legs on the ground.
Okay. And then this other individual and the dark khaki, it looks like pants, is that JoJo?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And then this other individual standing, laying in front of you, is that Mr. Holloway?
That is Mr. Holloway, yes.
Can you describe the position that he's in?
At this he's laying on his left side after he just rolled over onto his left side. His right leg is in a curled position.
Okay. And did you give him any commands?
Yes, I told him to lay flat on his stomach.
Did he comply?
No, he laid on his left side.
Okay, is laying on your left side the same thing as laying on your stomach?
No.
From an officer's safety standpoint, what's the difference?
He can facilitate an escape, or he can attack me by kicking me or sweeping my feet from underneath me.
Okay. And you told him to lay flat.
Correct.
And what did you do after you told him to lay flat?
I kicked him.
Okay, can you describe the kick?
I label it a kick because that's what the department categorizes it as, but it was more of a nudge, basically letting him know to get on his stomach.
Was it meant to inflict pain?
No.
Okay. And after you kick him, what does he do?
He does absolutely nothing. He stays on his left side.
Okay. And what did you do at that point?
At that point, I physically straightened his leg and put him flat on his stomach. And again, give him the direction, lay flat on your stomach, don't move. And I'm basically showing him the position in which I want him to stay at.
Okay. Now, after you lay him flat, what does Mr. Holloway do after that?
He then later returns to the position of laying on his left side again.
And is this a picture on his left side again?
Yes, he's on his left side, looking up at me at this point.
And the individual behind him in the light is Mr. Shields. Is he compliant?
He is still being compliant, playing in the same position, not moving, just staying still.
No. I'm going to take you back to the strikes of Mr. Holloway as the video begins. He indicated that you struck him to get control. Why did you need to get control of him?
I perceive it as him trying to stand up. I'm not going to give him the opportunity to stand up because I've been trained to pick up on these nonverbal cues, so I want to keep him in a position of disadvantage, which would be flat on the ground.
Now, we also hear you say, I'm a cop, you stupid motherfucker. Why do you say that to him?
I was just trying to get through to him. I mean, I've given him multiple verbal commands as well as Officer Williams, and frankly, he's acting like a maniac. He's out of control, and I'm just trying to get through to him.
And did you command him in the same way? Did you call him the same name as your previous commands?
No, when I first arrived, I announced my presence and gave him a clear and concise command.
Okay, and you didn't follow those.
No.
Did you strike Mr. Holloway because you were angry with him?
No.
Did you strike Mr. Holloway because you were frustrated?
No, he was resisting arrest and what I perceived as him trying to stand up.
Now, when you saw Mr. Holloway laying on his side with his leg curled up, what did you perceive that as?
Initially, I perceived it as him attempting to kick me. I perceived it as his aggressive posturing of his leg right before he kicked me. And just prior to, he positioned his leg the same exact way and kicked me.
Do you have to wait for somebody to kick or strike you before you can use force?
No, if I reasonably believe that he is going to strike me, I can strike him to prevent him from injuring me or, knocking me down.
Now, at some point after all this took place, before I get to that, now, at some point after all this took place, you watched did you watch any other videos of this other than the one that we have here?
I watched Officer LaCentra's body camera video.
Okay. And why did you watch that?
I was instructed by my supervisor, Sergeant Phil Clough, to watch it.
And following previous cases that you had you ever watched videos?
Yes.
What type of videos?
They're called the iris camera videos, but yes.
And can you explain to us what the iris camera videos are?
Objection as to the relevance of this.
That this was the normal course of business, this was a normal practice, as opposed to the state presented as if he was doing it for some other reason.
Overruled.
Can you describe to us what the iris videos are?
Iris videos are cameras that are strategically placed around the city of Orlando, which are constantly monitoring and recording street corners and certain intersections in the city of Orlando jurisdiction.
And why would you watch videos after the event?
We watch videos to either refresh our memory of the incident or to tell us if there's anything that we missed that could possibly help us out in the prosecution of the case later.
And do you watch these videos a long period of time later, or is it relatively close to the event?
Relatively close.
Okay. The event just happened. Why do you need a camera to refresh your memory?
Every situation is different. Depending on the stress of the situation, you may not remember things correctly. You should always, I always reviewed videos before writing my report.
I have what's previously been marked as Exhibit 3. Officer Escobar said that you sometimes review videos to refresh your recollection, and that stress could be a factor. Is that correct?
Correct.
And was this ordeal a stressful situation for you?
Indeed, it was.
And you testified that you saw Mr. Holloway go towards Officer Williams with a gun. Had you ever seen a person approach an officer with a gun drawn in that manner?
I had never seen somebody run at an officer who had a gun pointed at them in that fashion, in that manner, that quickly.
I'm going to show you the 35-second mark of this video.
The state would object at this point. If counsel wants to show him the 35-second mark, let's just play the video through that point and he can stop it with the audio, as opposed to cherry-picking little portions and taking things out of context.
Your Honor, the questions aren't to other parts of the video, it's just to this one part of the video. I'm trying to speed things along for the jury.
Certainly, if you think anything's left out, you're free to cover it on cross.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
Now, this is the 36-second. All right. Actually, 37-second mark. And this is after you move Mr. Holloway. Can you describe where do you know where you are at this point in the video?
Yes, this is after he's been handcuffed, and I moved him to what I believe was a safer location.
Okay. And can you describe where you are in this picture that we're looking at?
I am the person whose legs are right beside Mr. Holloway.
Okay. And is this essentially the view that you saw standing over him?
Yes, that's the same view.
Okay. And based on him being in that position, what did you perceive that as?
I perceived it as him rolling onto his left side and then aggressively posturing his leg and then curling his right leg in an attempt to kick me.
And it's difficult to see in this video, but was he looking at the ground, or did he turn around and look back at you?
He was turning to his, turning on his left side, trying to look up back at me.
And is that any type of cue to you?
Yes.
What's that a cue of? Cue to?
He's trying to figure out where I'm at.
Okay, and is that an issue of officer safety for you?
If he can identify where I'm at and he's in a
Objection, non-responsive.
who's anticipating the next question. I guess just answer one question at a time, sir.
Is that an issue of officer safety when you have a suspect that's turning around and looking back at you?
Yes,
Why?
because if he's identifying my location and he's in a position in which he can strike me, kick me, then that poses a threat, a danger to me.
And is that the point? At that point, did you give him instruction?
Yes, I told him to lay flat on his stomach.
Now, the fact that he had been pepper sprayed, is there a different set of rules when a person has been pepper sprayed and dealing with a suspect?
No.
The fact that he had been pepper sprayed, does that allow him to lay on his side as opposed to follow your command to lay flat on his stomach?
Now it still requires him to comply with every lawful command which I'm giving him for my safety and other officers and other people's safety.
Now, Officer Escobar, you put in your report, Holloway attempted to push up again and try and stand up again. What did you mean by that?
I meant that he was pushing up off the ground, both with his forearms and his upper body, his torso, in which I perceived him trying to stand up.
Okay. And now, at some point, his hands are behind his back, and is he still able to push up with his forearms?
No, at that point he's pushing up with his upper body, torso.
And how long of a period of time are we talking that this went on?
Between what?
At the point of time that he's pushing up.
Oh, we're talking about seconds here. Okay.
You also put in your report that he, meaning Holloway, rolled onto his left side and curled up his right leg. Why did you put that in your report?
Objection, asked and answered.
Sustained.
Move on now.
Okay.
You could take a look at the video. Is that the scene that you were describing in your report?
Yes, he rolled onto his left side and curled his right leg.
Your Honor, I could move the previous exhibit in. This is identified. I don't believe it's actually
The group of still photos?
this identification deed.
The aerial photo? That was never moved in? Did you want to show that to Mr. Williams?
I've seen it, Your Honor, no objection.
Okay, so admitted.
We see in the video that you moved from this location to another location. Why was that?
We moved from this specific location to a secondary location because the crowd was multiplying, more people were coming out, they were growing more and more angry, upset, and they started getting louder and louder and approaching us at that point, which obviously entails a very hostile environment in which we can't conduct our business.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you.
Does Your Honor want to break before state cross, or you want to just go through?
We can. You all want to take a little bathroom break for everybody's comfort? 5 minutes? Let's do that. Thank you.